now we have Prop 19 calculators for both base value transfers as well as inheritance transfer situations. So you'll want to go to lunatitleteam.com, and then there's two places you can get to this Understanding Prop 19 guide and calculators. The first would be in our guides section up at the top of the page here. You'll be taken to a page that looks something like this. You'll see some of our guides that we have here. We'll be talking about our Prop 19 guide. The other way you can find it would be on our homepage. You can scroll over with these cards, go to Understanding Prop 19 benefits, and you can scroll down. For future reference, once you're comfortable with these, you can just access these calculators directly here, but we'll go to that full Prop 19 guide here as well. This is where you'll have some general info on Prop 19, our two calculators that we'll be looking at. We also have some quick links, so if you're looking for a quick flyer that you can share with a client, we have them here in a summary version and a detailed version. You can download these as PDFs, PNGs. For Prop 19, it's generally impacting a property's assessed value, trying to create scenarios where a property owner can maintain either all of that low assessed value that they're paying property tax based off of, or keep most of that low assessed value and maybe have a slight reassessment instead of a full reassessment. The first case that we'll look at are situations where a property owner in California sells their primary residence and buys a new home somewhere else in California. And just to be clear, there are some key distinctions and criteria to be eligible for this type of Prop 19 transfer. The nice part about these calculators is you can go to this calculator for you section here. To be eligible for this type of Prop 19 transfer, a homeowner needs to be 55 years of age or older, severely disabled, a victim of a natural disaster or wildfire, and a key distinction is that they need to be selling their primary residence and purchasing a new primary residence. Step one would be using these calculators would be selecting the California county of a new home. The nice part about these calculators is we did bring in all of the accurate property tax rates for various California counties. If you're sitting down with your client, let's say they're going to sell their LA home, they're going to move closer to family in San Diego. So next, all you'll need to do is enter in three values for the Prop 19 tax savings calculator. The first is the assessed value of their home. That is the value that is different than the market value that the property tax bill is based on. So let's say someone bought their property, 1980 for $450,000. Because of Prop 13, that would have only gone up 2% a year after year. So let's say today, the current assessed value of their home is $800,000. So they're paying a low property tax bill, which is nice. Then let's say the market value of their current home has gone up quite a bit. So let's say the current market value of their home is $1.5 million. So this is where Prop 13 shines. Let's say someone is 60 years old. They just sold their primary residence here in LA. They're going to buy a new home near family in San Diego, and they want to make sure they don't get fully reassessed when they buy a new property because they don't want to pay all of a sudden a lot more in property taxes. So where Prop 19 shines is in the situation here. So let's say they're going to maybe downsize. So maybe they're going to sell their home. Maybe it's a 3-bedroom home. They wanted to buy an ocean view condo for $1.2 million. And so to look how this would work for them, we'll start with the without Prop 19 scenario. And the nice part about each of these calculators is you'll be able to put in these numbers really quick. It'll give you the results quickly. And the nice part is it'll actually change on the fly too. So as you're sitting with someone, you can go through different examples and see how these change over time as you're doing these example cases. And so to get an understanding of how Prop 19 works, I think it's helpful to start with the without Prop 19 section. So looking at what would happen if Prop 19 didn't exist, all they did was sell their primary residence at $1.5 million, bought this new home of $1.2 million. What would happen is their new assessed value, which that's what this taxable value is referring to, is $1.2 million. That's based off of this purchase price of $1.2 million. So to see what their annual property tax would be, you'd take the county tax rate for San Diego. And like I said, these are accurate. So let's say I came in here and instead of San Diego, I chose Orange. Now we'd see the Orange County tax rate be plugged in here. What we'll do is we'll take this taxable value, $1.2 million based off the purchase price, multiply it by the county tax rate, and we get an estimated annual property tax rate of $12,600. And we can look at with Prop 19. The estimated annual property taxes we can see are quite a bit lower than without Prop 19. They're $8,400 relative to this $12,000 figure. We see that essentially they're downsizing. What this means is that the purchase price of their new home is less than in value to the market value of their current home of $1.5 million. So as a result, what Prop 19 allows for is if the purchase price of their new home is less than the current value of their current home, they simply get to take this assessed value with them. So now we see the new taxable value of their home remains $800,000. Once again, we can just multiply this by the county tax rate to get their estimated annual property tax rate here. For each of these estimates, then you'll also see a nice breakdown of the estimated annual savings. Let's say you're sitting down with a client, you wanted to show them how this calculator works. You can always click this how this was calculated section here. And this will show the math behind it. Prop 19 allows you to transfer your current assessed value to a new home anywhere in California up to 3 times if the purchase price is equal to or less than your current home's market value, like we talked about. So we'll have the math here. It says you're buying a new home for $1.2 million, which is equal to or less than the current market value of your home of $1.5 million. And since you're downsizing, your current assessed value transfers fully to a new home, and we see that we simply take that math, we get this new estimated annual property tax. And so the beauty of Prop 19 really comes in situations where they're upsizing. So let's say instead of downsizing, they buy their dream home. They sell their property for $1.5 million. They buy a nice dream home still down in Orange County for $2 million. Their previous assessed value of $800,000. And so once again, we'll look at the example case of without Prop 19 first. And so what would happen is their new assessed value would become the purchase price of their property. So $2 million. We'll take the county tax rate of 1.05% for Orange County, multiply that by the taxable value, and we get an estimated annual property tax of $21,000. A steep jump, in annual property tax liability for someone that might be retiring soon, might not have as much income as they did before. Now all of a sudden they're paying more in property taxes if they're not using Prop 19. And so we see with Prop 19, this move type is considered upsizing. The new taxable value is $1.3 million. So you don't really see that anywhere here, right? We don't see 1.3 anywhere, so it could be a bit confusing about where this comes from, but we see that estimated annual property taxes using Prop 19, we get this new estimated annual property tax rate and the savings of using Prop 19. So check out this math now. So this upsizing move, which is considered an adjusted base value transfer, meaning they do reassess the property taxes and the assessed value slightly, but not a full reassessment. As it says here, Prop 19 lets you transfer your current assessed value even when buying a more expensive home. In cases where your new home's purchase price is higher than your old home's market value, the difference between those two, being the new home's purchase price and the value of your old home, is added to your assessed value. So let's say you're purchasing this new home for $2 million, which is higher than your current home's market value of $1.5 million. So as we looked at here, we'll take the difference between those two numbers. So that's $500,000. And now you add this figure to your previous assessed value. So the difference between these is 500,000. We'll add that to the current assessed value here of 800,000. So now we have a figure of $1.3 million, and that is the new assessed value. So we can come in here, we'll take this Orange County tax rate of 1.05, multiply that by the new assessed value, and that's how we get this $13,650 figure. That's true of when they're buying a property that's more expensive. Like I said, they can do this up to 3 times. So we'll do inheritance calculators. So these would be a situation where someone is inheriting a property from a parent or grandparent. Maybe they're going to move into it, maybe they're not going to move into it, and they want to have an awareness of what's going to happen with the property taxes associated with that property. That's where you'd want to use this Prop 19 inheritance calculator. This calculator will give you an "Is this calculator for you?" section here where you can see what it takes to qualify. Use this tool if you inherited property from a parent or grandparent in California. The main requirements are that the person inheriting the property must live in the inherited home within 1 year of inheriting that property. Another key distinction, the inherited home must have been their parents' or grandparents' primary residence as well. The math on this one can be a little bit wonky to think of at first, but we do have a nice calculated section we'll look at. You'll have some inputs that you'll need to interact with just to make sure that the primary resident was for their parent or grandparent, their primary residence, and that the inheritor will move into this property within 1 year of inheriting it. Can get all of these property tax rates accurate to that county. So let's say they're inheriting property in Ventura County, and let's say that this assessed value was really low, is now $500,000 for this property. And so what you'll need to do with this calculator is bring in the fair market value at the time of inheritance. So let's say now the market value of this home is $1.7 million. And so now we see when we put in these numbers here, we'll get a comparison without Prop 19 and with Prop 19. First, we'll start with Prop 19 here. We see that we get a full reassessment. This is considered a transfer. They're going to make the new assessed value the fair market value at the time of inheritance, meaning you're going to have a new estimated annual property tax of $18,000. So now your multiplying this figure by 1.09, and you're getting an estimated annual property tax of $18,000. With Prop 19 inheritance exclusions, we see that we have a new assessed value of $700,000. Just by looking at this, it might be a bit confusing because you don't see a $700,000 anywhere, but we see that we have a steep discount. We get to multiply this by this, and we get an estimated annual property tax rate of $7,630, estimated annual savings of $10,000 a year by leveraging Prop 19 inheritance exclusions. Let's look at the math, see what's going on behind the scenes so you can feel more confident when talking to friends, family, whoever it may be that's inheriting a property, and let them know about some of the property tax implications. We'll look at how this was calculated. So we have this first check here that they plan to live in the inherited home, which means they're eligible for Prop 19, which helps, but only up to a certain point. So in essence, Prop 19 and the assessors provide an exclusion on reassessments as long as the fair market value of the property does not exceed the assessed value by $1 million. So the easiest way to think about how to calculate these inheritance situations is to simply start by adding $1 million to the current assessed value. So what we'll do is we'll take this assessed value, we'll add $1 million to it. So now we're looking at $1.5 million. Next, what you do is you compare this figure to the current market value of the home. So we'll look at 1.7 and $1.5 million. Then what you do is if this market value is greater than this value, which was the assessed value plus $1 million, you take the difference between these two numbers here and add it to the assessed value. So in this case, since the market value of $1.7 million is higher than this $1 million plus the assessed value, we'll take the difference between the market value and that number here, which is $200,000, and we'll add that to the previous assessed value. So then market value 1.7, then we take 1 million, add it to the current assessed value, we get 1.5. This is greater than this figure. So this minus this, 200,000, add this to the current assessed value, you get 700,000 as the new assessed value. Now all you have to do is take the tax rate for Ventura, or like I said, let's say it was, San Bernardino County. We'll take that tax rate, multiply it by the assessed value, and you get the new estimated annual property tax. Basically what it's looking at is the fair market value at the time of inheritance greater than $1 million than the assessed value? To look at how that might work differently, let's say it's less than $1 million greater. So it's $900,000 greater. What happens in that case is they simply get to take that assessed value with them. So we see that the new assessed value is still just $500,000. Here we get the nice estimated annual property tax, the big savings here. If we look at how this was calculated, we see that because you plan to live in the property within 1 year of inheriting the home, Prop 19 lets you keep the lower tax value as long as the home isn't worth more than $1 million above the assessed value. So we can do that math again. We can add 1 million to the assessed value, that's 1.5 million. Compare it to the market value of 1.4 million. Since this figure is greater, all you have to do is bring in the old assessed value and then just multiply that by the tax rate, and you have a nice estimated annual property tax rate. And this will update dynamically for you. Let's say that wasn't the primary residence. All of a sudden, we'll see that this is a full reassessment because it was not the primary resident of the parent or grandparent. Or let's say they're not planning on moving in. Same thing. We'll see full reassessment. So nice way where you can really kind of walk someone through an example cases of inheriting a property. It really can make a massive difference.